about methodology, we could have said this. We saw the last halacha before Hanukkah was the time of Hanukkah candle lighting, and we saw that sugya in the Mishnah Berurah about when Shkia is according to Rabbeinu Tam and the major machlokes and the Gra, the Geonim, and we saw Rabbi Avi Yosef's tshuva. I just need to point out that the Mishnah Berurah and Rabbi Avi Yosef are certainly not Torah Eretz Yisrael. Why? Let's look at the Mishnah Berurah. He's first. The Mishnah Berurah is arguing what there? When Mishnah Berurah says in that Siman Reish Samech Aleph, I think it was, about regarding taking in Shabbos early and lighting candles and the whole thing with Shkia, what was the Mishnah Berurah's point? He pointed out that the Shulchan Aruch holds of Rabbeinu Tam's opinion that halachic sundown is sometime well after actual sundown, correct? And maybe the Mishnah Berurah is telling us that, you should know that the Vilna Gaon reintroduced an old idea that was already could find, and he has a whole laundry list of sources, that sundown actually means what? Sundown. Now, what was the Mishnah Berurah's point in doing this? He says it very clearly, if you continue. He says, at least l'chumra, you should hold that when Shabbos comes in, you have to assume that sundown is when Shabbos starts. Sundown is sundown. That's the halachic sundown. If you want to do Tosefes Shabbos, it has to be sometime before sundown. That was why he said it. You should hold like the Vilna Gaon and the Rambam in this case, because sundown means sundown. It's a mitzvah d'oraisa. But when Shabbos is out, you should hold like Rabbeinu Tam. You should be machmir on both ends. The Mishnah Berurah's methodology is what? Be aware of all the different opinions and be machmir for all of them, which is the Mishnah Berurah's approach throughout the entire book. That's not Torah Eretz Yisrael. Torah Eretz Yisrael means find the truth. When is Shkia, the halachic Shkia, and go with that. And if that means that also at the end of Shabbos, 35 minutes, or possibly even earlier after sundown, Shabbos is over, then go ahead. Start, cooking and doing all your malachas. Mishnah Berurah would be opposed to that. Mishnah Berurah would say at least you have to also be machmir for Rabbeinu Tam on the tail end. So Mishnah Berurah is not Torah Eretz Yisrael. Rav Avi Yosef's opinion there is even stranger. His is more, here's a list of all the Rishonim Achronim who hold like Rabbeinu Tam in this regard. And the Shulchan Aruch is always the correct opinion. Halacha kamoso Hashem imo, that's it. No disagreeing. And don't bother bringing me other sources and other things. We hold like the Shulchan Aruch in this case. The case has been closed already. Please go home. That's not Torah Eretz Yisrael. And you can find that throughout his writings. He just brings you, here is a list of major sources who hold opinion A. There is opinion B. Maybe there is also a whole list of major names that hold of it, but this is the one we hold like. And he will not give you an argument why this is the correct opinion and why this one is rejected. You can't really find it. And that's why it's frustrating to learn with these people also. I don't enjoy it because they don't explain based on, let's say, a strict Talmudic proof why this opinion and not the other. Have you seen this in your base matters yet? I don't think you have. Does Or Sameach have any? But are there any like real Sephardic type, Israeli Sephardic types who teach halacha? And no, of course not. So you have to first get out of it. So, and I'm very surprised by this, but it's not Torah Eretz Yisrael. The Gra, however, in this case, basically says Rabbeinu Tam's opinion cannot be. And the Gra, like the Rambam, he goes with the truth. He doesn't try to fit all the opinions. He doesn't try to find some sort of, precedent is we're Sephardim and we hold like the Shulchan Aruch, so there. The Mishnah Berurah sometimes just says, try to make shalom between everybody. Shulchan Aruch says sometimes we don't hold like the Shulchan Aruch, period. And sometimes we don't hold like the Ramah either. Sometimes we don't hold like anybody on the page. Well, the Gra does that many times. I've shown you guys there was we have a running list of where the Gra says, not like this, not like that. Like you should just know the Rambam quotes Yerushalmi. Wink, wink. Okay? Not like this, not like that. It's something else. We saw that with regards to handling the parchment of a Sefer Torah directly. What's the Vilna Gaon's opinion?
As long as you're not naked.
No, so no, it's like you're allowed. There never was a prohibition of touching or handling Sefer Torah parchment. When you study Torah, you handle, when you take the Sefer Torah out of its closet. Let's say you had in the olden days, that's how you studied. You had a Sefer of some sort. It was Torah, and you should make sure that you're clothed when you are studying Torah, like the Rambam has, like Yerushalmi has, and that's it. Okay, so now we could get back to studying halacha. And sorry that we had to have those follow-ups. But I'm very surprised that these holidays come and go and we miss it. Unfortunately, I think Asara B'Teves is on its way. Here, please take a copy of the halacha. Asara B'Teves is on its way. The Vilna Gaon reminds us there. By the way, when is the fast over? If there's a fast, Sunday. Very clearly, just exactly like the Gemara says. How many of the luchos tell you that the fast is over at sundown? Okay, none. They all say the fast will be over at Seis, just like Rabbeinu Tam says, but not Rabbeinu Tam. No, it's Rabbeinu. No, that like the Shulchan Aruch says, we have to hold Seis because we don't know when Seis is because it's so late. So now we've put Seis as the time, but we've totally redefined it. We've gone back to the old definition. So what's the point? They don't know what they're doing, and doing good.
Rabbi Grossman?
How do we know this? What was that?
What do you hold regarding? Do you hold like the Gra on that issue of when the fast ends?
The Talmud only gives one opinion. The fast day is over at the sundown, and the exception or the novelty of, let's say, a fast day on Tisha B'Av or Yom Kippur is that even during Ben Hashmashot, one has to continue fasting, which means one has to wait for Tzeit on those two fasts. Okay, that is explicit.
Well, as far as you're, I see. So as far as you're concerned, it's there's not even anything to discuss here. It's clear that it's Shkia, and that's it.
It always was. But we've discussed this before. There's a previous shurim. We saw the sources already. For the major source of everything, see what the Vilna Gaon says. Be'er Gra on that siman in Orach Chaim that we saw last week. The sources I put them online, and the first Beis Yosef in Hilchos Tainus, where the Beis Yosef himself says, by the way, there's no more safer. They're the two most subversive svarim that you can learn halacha for, let's say, Haredi society, where people just want to wear these. People are set in their ways. Like this is it. Don't tell me otherwise. The two most subversive svarim are the Beis Yosef and the Be'er Gra. The Beis Yosef more so, only because the Be'er Gra is cryptic, written in shorthand, and sometimes he's not direct. He just alludes to it. But the Beis Yosef will tell you right then, here are my sources, here's why I'm holding this way. And if you don't hold of, whatever methodology he's doing, you can come to a perfectly reasonable opposite conclusion. Good example that we should do one of these days. Counting the words in Kriyat Shema. Why do we repeat certain words? Why do people say Kel Melech Ne'aman before Shema? Why do we say the Chazan should say this and then repeat these words? What's the reason ostensibly behind this? To get to a special gematria number of words in Kriyat Shema. Who doesn't hold of such a thing? The Beis Yosef brings the whole discussion there. But the Beis Yosef is showing us that it's not Talmudic, it's not unanimous, it's a Kabbalistic idea. It has all these things behind it that basically, if he holds your hand. If you don't make any of all these assumptions, which let's say Maimonides and the Rif and many Rishonim never made, then this whole story doesn't even get off the ground. And that's why, for example, in all the iterations of Sidur Eretz Yisrael, Nusach Eretz Yisrael, what do they have to say about repeating words in Kriyat Shema, Kel Melech Ne'aman Hashem Elokechem Emeth, what the Chazan says? How much of this whole thing appears in the text of those Sidurim? Absolutely none of it. Okay? How do you say Shema? You say, and matter of fact, you can say Amen to Oheveth Amo Yisrael. In all cases, you just go into saying Shema Yisrael, and if you're the Chazan, you say it out loud, and everybody says it out loud together. And Kriyat Shema is just straight through, exactly as it appears in the Torah scroll, with the addition of Baruch Shem Fil Ma'afil Yom La'ed, and Ani Hashem Elokechem, and that's it. And you don't repeat something. If you're the Chazan, you just say Ani Hashem Elokechem as part of the rest of the pasuk. You don't repeat anything, and then the next paragraph begins, and Meth V'Yasiv, and that's it. And most people would never get to this in their life if they did not actually read the Beit Yosef. So you read the Sefer, you will come to one of two conclusions. You have to somehow compensate 3 words and to get to your Kriyat Shema to get to this magic number, or you could just realize this is a non-Talmudic idea. We don't need to do this. Game over. And that's why the Beis Yosef is such a, like I said, a subversive Sefer. It tells you all the sources and it shows you how to learn them. So you could come to perfectly reasonable conclusions that other people might not even be aware of. You know,
Rabbi Grossman,
Yeah.
regarding the fasts ending at Shkia, to the best
Yeah.
of your knowledge, are only people such as yourself and people that follow the Gra the only ones nowadays that actually say that? Are there actually other big poskim in the so-called mainstream world that also say that?
I don't know of anybody out. This is like many sugyas. I don't think that this has gotten the attention of anybody in the last few centuries. I'm not a posik, by the way. I'm just someone who's pointing out that the Beis Yosef, what he says, that it's assumed for most of Jewish history that public fast days end at Shkia. That's what the Talmud says. That's what the Vilna Gaon says. That's what the Rambam says. And it's only because of this whole complication of Rabbeinu Tam's opinions that it became tzeis. I have contacted the calendar printers regarding this and other issues, especially the Kiddush Levana issues, and basically fallen on deaf ears. They just seem to be copying from each other. There's no chidush in anything they do. So I think what really should be done is we should just print our own calendars. Rabbi Bar-Hayim talks about the final edition of Nusach Eretz Yisrael of the prayers, which, by the way, I don't think it's going to come out anytime soon because there's still scholarship being done. Even let's say you would print it today, who knows, in a decade from now, these fine gentlemen might find more to adjust, if not the Rav himself. And so I think that's not something that's worth doing, but I do think putting out a proper calendar, which does have all these adjusted, I guess, times to reflect, let's say, just straight Talmudic law, has not been done in a long time. And perhaps, we should do that, but I don't have time. So had Poskim been attempting to deal with these issues? Look at the literature. There's not much. There's really not much.
The Zilberman does end at Shkia, though?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I would not be, by the way, I would not look to the Zilbermanses. What do they call them? Zilbermansim, whatever their term is for themselves. They're all full of mavericks. Every one of them is a scholar, so they all do their own thing. But to say that what they do is what the Gross says to do is mistaken. They know they do. Let's say I daven at the Chorva regularly, by the way. Whenever I have to get to the old city early in the morning, that's where my chosen place to daven. It's better than davening outdoors at the kotel because it's cold there. It's too much of a distraction. So you daven at Zilberman's, but they do a lot of things that are patently and obviously not like the Gra would do. They're just doing a modern day yeshivish Haredi culture davening with some well-known Vilna Gaon practices. But you could point them out to them something complicated like the Vilna Gaon would not do like this, but whatever. They don't want to hear that. Maybe some of them do, and they'll adopt it. The most obvious thing that they're doing not like the Gra, when you just walk in there and you see it's not Gra, is, you guys have been there? Okay, maybe you've seen this, that their pronunciation of Hebrew does not fit what the Gra says in Diktuk Eliyahu. It just doesn't. The fact that they don't bother to adjust their Havara in any way. They basically do, let's just say, what's the common Haredi Yeshivish Havara, which is based on nothing. It's a combination of what Poilisher sounded like and some other things. It just doesn't fit. And the best example is their I. Okay, if you were Litvak, you'd say A, and the Gra said O. That's obvious. And they're saying I like everybody else. And the I itself is just a kametz, their Israeli kametz, which is basically an Israeli cholam. They don't pronounce it even properly. Cholam should be more of an like sound, but they pronounce it more like O because they only have 5 vowels that they could pronounce, but they want to sound Ashkenazic. So their cholam is basically their kametz, which is already 2 kamutz. It's already too close to a cholam plus a yud. So it's I, which is incorrect. And then they have a tzerei, which is basically a sagol plus a yud. Okay, so like a lot of Ashkenazim do that, but other than that, it's incorrect. So they have some issues. They're not the keepers of the Vilna Gaon's tradition the way, let's say, we would want them to see. Where we have this romantic thing that is anybody out there doing like the Gra would do. truly like the Rav would do? Unfortunately, not. So even in this regard, I don't know what they're doing, but I wouldn't look to them for indications or a demonstration of what the Gra's true opinion on something was. So yeah, the fast is over at Shkia, and if you want to know why, it's because the Talmud assumes that that's when the fast is over.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.